One click of the mouse unearthed a secret buried for 159 years, leaving an entire team of historians pale with shock. Summer 1864, on the edge of Poplar Grove Church, near Petersburg, Virginia. The 32nd Federal Infantry Regiment paused for a midday rest in the sweltering 95-degree Fahrenheit heat. Civilian photographer Daniel Rohr set up his large wooden camera with a wet collodion plate, carefully loading a 10 by 12-inch ambrotype glass. He called it the farewell keepsake, in case any of these young men were to fall. A century and a half later, beneath the shadow of oak leaves, the ashen face of a man in a felt hat appears. History recorded that he had died 3 weeks earlier in a field hospital, but the collodion doesn't lie. Why does this ghost stare so boldly into the lens, like he's sending a message through time? If you discovered something chilling in your family's old photo, what would you do? Drop your answer in the comments to let MindGap know. Buckle up. The investigation starts now. Just 6 months ago, the Library of Congress's digital imaging team placed a fragile 10 by 12-inch ambrotype glass plate under a 4K scanner. A cold beam of light passed through the century-and-a-half-old, discolored collodion layer. The first scan revealed the Poplar Grove encampment in near-full clarity. Dark Union tents, a sun-scorched summer oak forest, and a line of soldiers catching their breath in the midday heat. Then, the technician zoomed in behind the leaves, in the background, a face. A man staring directly into the lens, wide-eyed, like he'd just been caught. He wore a coat, but not the regulation Union jacket, no brass eagle, no green copper buttons, nothing. That's when the historians on site froze. His photo had been archived for over a century as a textbook example of Civil War documentation. But suddenly, it was anything but ordinary. To rule out a mistake, researchers dug into the original roster of the 32nd U.S. Colored Infantry. The regiment camped near Poplar Grove in late summer 1864. Records showed the battalion consisted entirely of black soldiers. The payroll listed no assistant photographers other than Daniel Rohr. That killed the theory of a camera crew member accidentally photobombing. The man hiding in the trees didn't match any name. His skin color didn't match any record. Next came technical tests. During the Civil War, wet plate collodion required at least 5 seconds of exposure, sometimes up to 20. Even the smallest movement would blur like a ghost. But the man's outline was crisp. His coat? So clear you could see every fold. The grain matched the foreground. 40 Union soldiers captured in the same exposure. No double negatives, no darkroom trickery. A diary from nearby Pennsylvania troops confirmed that July 30th was blistering hot. So hot they had to dump water over their barracks to stay cool. Perfect conditions for drying glass plates and creating mirages in heat waves. But mirages don't wear incorrect uniforms. The team has since sealed the original plate, awaiting terahertz scanning to analyze the silver molecules layer by layer. So who, or what, was this mystery figure? A Confederate spy? A Quaker pacifist caught in the wrong place? Or something even more chilling? A time traveler accidentally caught in frame? But here at MindGap, we're not done digging because every uniform missing its insignia leaves a hole in history, and maybe, just maybe, the real answer is hanging in a frame, right there on your living room wall. To understand why the mysterious glass plate ended up beneath the cold lights of the National Archives, the team of historians had no choice but to retrace its chain of ownership. The last ink mark of transfer led them back to a drizzly auction afternoon on the outskirts of Gettysburg in March 2023, where an anonymous collector paid a mere $280 for a wooden box faintly engraved with D. Rohr 1864. So who was this man? And why did he hold the key to a gaping hole in history unlocked with a single 40-second bid. To decode the answer, we must rewind time to the very moment the auctioneer's gavel struck. It was a drizzly March afternoon in 2023 when a small auction house on the edge of a cornfield near Gettysburg was suddenly packed with relic hunters. The most intense bidding war wasn't over a saber or uniform, but a plain wooden box with a cracked sliding lid. Faint pencil markings on the top read, D. Rohr, 1864. After just 40 seconds of heated back and forth, the gavel slammed down. Winner: Thomas Hensley, an obscure collector. Final price: $280. No one in the room had any idea that dusty box was about to rewrite a piece of American history. Back at his study, Hensley pried out the rusted nails and opened the box in silence. Inside, a 25 by 30 centimeter ambrotype glass plate, 3 faded Union brass buttons, and a scorched letter with just a few brown ink lines remaining. Civil War ambrotypes were rarely larger than a few playing cards, so the massive size immediately raised red flags. Then Hensley spotted it, etched faintly into the glass. August 22, 1964. That timestamp aligned perfectly with the 32nd Regiment's encampment at Poplar Grove. To understand what he had, Hensley dug into sales data. Typical Union soldier ambrotypes on eBay go for $200 to $300, some even less if the glass is chipped. But auction house records told another story. Just last year, a portrait of Captain Richardson, who died at Gettysburg, fetched $1,280 at Case Antiques, 4 times the estimated price. That's when Hensley realized his $280 gamble might be the steal of the century. He immediately sent the plate to Heritage Digital Transitions, a lab equipped with 16-bit scanners designed to capture high silver content negatives without cracking their delicate surfaces. This is the same tech used by the Library of Congress to digitize their Civil War archive. The scan revealed stunning detail from dried mud on soldier boots to individual tent seams at Poplar Grove. But one corner was odd. The left side of the image was fogged, as if covered in smoke. Only the oak forest seemed blurred, while the rest was crystal clear. Suspicious, Hensley scanned the edge of the plate with UV light. Gray-black streaks lit up instantly. Fingerprints mixed with silver nitrate dust. Someone had rubbed the image while the emulsion was still wet. Sweat and salt left permanent chemical imprints. For photoconservators, this wasn't an accident. This was intentional image destruction, an attempt to erase something from history. The date, August 22, 1864, didn't just match Union movement logs. It also fell right during a surge of Confederate espionage activity around Petersburg. Digging deeper, Hensley uncovered a shocking connection. Sergeant Major John L. Woodbury, Royal officer, reported losing a full glass image of Poplar Grove just 1 week after that photo's timestamp. Historians were stunned. Woodbury had been tasked with identifying spies along the Eastern Front, but his record suddenly stopped in early 1865. And as they looked further, another name disappeared. Daniel Rohr, the photographer, vanished from all post-war civilian archives. So what are we looking at here? A cover-up of stolen intelligence? Or worse, evidence of someone who was never supposed to be there? Because if there really was a figure standing in that blurred forest, they were well within shooting range, while that photo was exposed for roughly 10 seconds. According to the New Orleans Historical Center, wet plate collodion required the entire coding shooting development process to be completed in 15 minutes, meaning photographers controlled every second of the frame. There's no such thing as a random bystander in these images. Now picture this. You're Hensley. And in your hands is a glass plate that might redraw the entire map of Civil War espionage. So what do you think it's worth? Drop your guess in the comments. The appraisal team is still arguing over it right now. And don't blink, because Hensley's next mouse click would push this mystery into something far darker. That fogged forest corner was about to reveal the shape of a man, in a hard hat, standing in a posture no Union soldier ever used. Who erased him? And what were they trying to bury for 159 years? Hensley instructed the technician to push the resolution to its maximum and perform another ultra-slow 16-bit scan, hoping to pierce through the haze concealing the secret. Tension gripped the darkroom. Everyone held their breath, waiting to see if the halide silver layer would finally surrender its truth after 159 years of silence. And then, just as the final scan line passed over the tree canopy, a sharp ting rang out from the waveform monitor, signaling the data was ready. At Mind Gap, we'll keep peeling back the silver layers, but you better be ready because sometimes the truth is just a few microns of glass away. The 16-bit scanner had just completed its third exposure when a sharp ting rang out. The image was ready. The forest behind the Poplar Grove camp now appeared like solid sculpture. But this time, there it was. In the middle of a sweet gum thicket, 15 meters from the tents, a face in a dark felt hat emerged. The man stared directly into the lens with pitch-black eyes. His shoulders leaned hard left, as if he were hiding behind the thick trunk of a 70-centimeter tree. None of the Union soldiers in the foreground reacted. No glances, no alarm. It was as if the entire camp had been frozen, caught in a 10-second trance by the collodion plate. Anyone who doubts the resolution of Civil War photography might want to think again. A 10 by 12-inch wet plate scanned at 5,600 dpi holds over 90 megapixels worth of detail. Photography blogger Hansa Hubichka once showed that even an 11 by 13 centimeter plate from 1880 needed 90 megapixel scans to clearly reproduce a half-millimeter high letter. Collectors on the large format photography forums confirm collodion images are sharper than most modern film, thanks to ultrafine silver particles. At that resolution, deepfake edits are nearly impossible. Any digital tampering leaves jagged edges or color halos. But this felt hat? Perfectly smooth, undeniably original. Did you catch the face before your eyes drifted to the red technician's marker? Comment now, because blink, and that crucial detail disappears into the oak leaves. To uncover the stranger's identity, Hensley's team turned to Civil War Photo Sleuth, an AI facial recognition platform created by Dr. Kurt Luther. It maps 67 landmarks on the ear and cheekbones, then cross-references them with the Library of Congress's Soldier Archives. The result left the lab stunned. 87% match with a December 1864 wanted poster for a double agent and assassin codenamed Gray Crow, real name Elias Finch. That name rings bells in genealogy circles. The 1902 Family History Hughes and Allied Families lists Elias Finch, born April 18, 1823 in Fort Wayne, but disappears from all records after 1864. His death date is blank. The only note, missing while serving in Confederate ranks. Problem is, federal medical logs from February 1864 reported Finch dead, of typhoid, at a City Point Field Hospital. If the record is correct, the man behind the sweet gum in Poplar Grove had come back 6 months after his own death certificate. That moment turned the photo from a historical relic into a possible intelligence time bomb. A double agent thought long dead, immortalized by Daniel Rohr's lens, had stood in plain view for 159 years, completely unnoticed. The hunt for Gray Crow had just been reignited in the 21st century. With terahertz spectral imaging now lined up to scan each silver crack, we've only just scratched the surface of the truth. So what do you think? Was that face in the trees a coincidence? Or did Elias Finch deliberately leave behind one final message, knowing someone in the future would look back. Hit subscribe and follow MindGap, because in the next chapter we'll dive into military journals, medical logs, and the wanted for sabotage posters issued in New Orleans in late 1864 to find out where Gray Crow really came from and why he stared into that lens as if he knew we'd be watching. In the middle of the brightly lit lab, the name Elias Finch kept blinking on the recognition screen, like a challenge thrown in their faces. To understand how a man with a recorded death certificate could still be seen lurking beneath the sweet gum canopy, we must turn back the pages of a shadowy file he left scattered along the warfront. And that journey begins in 1862, when the man known as Gray Crow first donned the uniform of a field surgeon by the banks of the Rappahannock River. In January 1862, amid the stench of sweat and iodine in a Confederate field hospital near the Rappahannock River, a man calling himself Dr. Elias Finch arrived with a medical diploma shorter than a permission slip. The surgical team was short-staffed, so he was accepted immediately. No one had time to ask about his training. In the medication log, Finch listed diluted tincture of opium as anesthetic for abdominal incisions, at twice the recommended dose. 4 soldiers died of infection that very afternoon. Their files were folded shut with the note, "Post-operative complications." The Wilson's Creek archive of the National Park Service paints a grim picture. Countless quack surgeons during the Civil War were hired through connections, then sank into laudanum and hard liquor no less than the patients they treated. Civil War medical museum analysis confirms that doctors at the time often applied powdered opium directly onto open wounds, an improvised local anesthetic that was cheap but perilous. By late summer 1863, as Union cavalry stormed around Culpeper, Finch vanished from the hospital and reappeared in the guise of a blacksmith, wearing a coat marked with the Union's eagle insignia. Archives from the Richmond Dispatch listed dozens of ads recruiting metalworkers for the Reese and Company photography studio, including one posted March 13, 1862, calling for a blacksmith skilled in boring cannon barrels, a rare expertise outside the artillery corps. Not long after, the Field Munitions Depot at Browns Island, then the Confederacy's hub for percussion caps, exploded, killing 12 underage girls and injuring 58. The post-incident investigation on March 13, 1863, concluded accidental negligence, but many modern historians point to improper barrel boring that allowed gunpowder to leak across the wooden floors. A forged timesheet from the foundry listed a scribbled name, E. Finch, Temp. In early June of that year, a 10-line filler item in the Richmond Dispatch sketched a wandering photographer named Finch, trading soldier portraits for ration stamps. The article survives only on microfilm roll DN0043 at the University of Virginia, but it's enough to show Finch had learned the craft of shadow catching in some backroom of Reese and Company. Now in his hands, a compact wet collodion camera capable of replicating a camp's layout in 8 seconds of exposure. Intelligence experts note that such photographic negatives, when viewed under an oil lamp, revealed trench details too precise to draw by hand. A perfect 19th century spy tool. If you think posing as a battlefield photographer is the perfect disguise, hit like, because Finch's scheme was far bolder. On the night of July 20th, 1864, as General Hood's Confederate regiments scrambled to patch Atlanta's western defenses, military police detained a gaunt man with a wooden camera near a railway junction. A court-martial record dated July 28th states the prisoner, E. Finch, died in a dawn artillery strike, his body unrecovered in the labyrinth of flaming trenches. That file should have been the end of the story, but after the war, the Georgia Missing Persons Commission listed Finch among 1,638 names under the column Body Unrecovered, citing how repeated bombardments had churned the Atlanta front line into mass grave confusion. So when a 21st century lab circled Finch's face in the Poplar Grove ambrotype, dated August 22, 1864, just 3 weeks after he was declared dead. The entire historical theory collapsed. If Finch truly died in Atlanta, who stood behind the sweet gum leaves in Petersburg? And if he survived, was the death report just a smokescreen to let a double agent disappear? From self-proclaimed doctor and opium abuser, to saboteur blacksmith, to photographer duplicating enemy maps, Finch vanished amid the South's bloodiest campaigns. Each identity left a scar: a medical malpractice, the Browns Island tragedy, and the fall of Atlanta. And all that remains is a single line etched into glass: AUG 2264. Still believe in coincidence? Drop your theory in the comments. But a file, no matter how dark, is just ink on paper unless placed beside a real-world scene. So to verify whether Finch was merely a phantom of the archives or the man steering the fate of an entire regiment, we must rewind to the exact day he appeared in the frame. August 22, 1864, Poplar Grove. From that point in time, every crosshatch on the map, every seemingly random troop movement began to form a trail, one that led directly to a blood-soaked bend called Deep Bottom. And this is where the reel speeds up. Rohr's camera frame flashes, regimental formation shifts within just 3 days, and then, at dawn on August 25th, the world explodes under a Confederate barrage. At precisely 12:17 p.m. on August 22, 1864, beneath the Poplar Grove's shimmering canopy, Daniel Rohr's wooden lens clicked. In the harsh sunlight, 32 soldiers from the 32nd Colored Infantry stood at attention, but hidden deeper in the sweet gum thicket. The silhouette of a man in a felt hat tilted slightly. Then vanished what seemed like a routine field portrait turned out to be the first note in a deadly symphony. The etched caption on the glass, AUG 2264, would later be identified as the trigger to the most catastrophic event ever recorded by that regiment. 2 days later, on August 24th, an unexpected marching order diverted the regiment through Harrison's Forest Trail instead of along the Quaker Road. The route on the command's stamped map was oddly marked with parallel slashes, unlike any standard military notation. When modern analysts cross-referenced the pattern, they found an uncanny match with the style used by Elias Finch, also known as Gray Crow, when sketching terrain using wet collodion plates. That stylistic fingerprint had already been archived by Union intelligence as early as June 1863. At dawn on August 25th, just as the regiment crossed the wooden edge of Deep Bottom Bridge, Confederate artillery erupted from both flanks. Within 15 minutes, command lines were severed, formations disintegrated, and smoke blanketed the forest floor. Post-war reports confirmed the ambush wiped out 61% of the unit, from commanding officers to stretcher bearers. The number seemed unbelievable until matched against broader records. The Deep Bottom campaign, August 14th to 20th, had logged 2,899 Union casualties, and Fox's 1889 military records cite several regiments in that battle zone losing over half their numbers in a single charge. How did an entire unit march straight into a kill zone? The clue may lie in a singed letter, tucked beneath 3 blue buttons in Daniel Rohr's wooden box. The note, attributed to Corporal Jeremy Holden, recounted a dark-coated stranger claiming to be a scout from HQ, who whispered directions through the oak and sketched a crude forest map. Though the ink had blurred from heat, Finch's trademark slanted script was unmistakable, mirroring the same crosshatch marks found on the ambush map. XRF scans by Duke University's Historical Paper Lab revealed traces of silver nitrate on the letter's edges, suggesting it had been in contact with photographic chemicals that lined up with long circulating rumors that Finch had used his darkroom precision not just to copy maps, but to seed deadly misinformation. In fact, the Richmond Dispatch, June 1, 1863, ran a short piece on a wandering photographer named Finch, accompanied by a sketch, deep-set eyes, and a felt hat shading the bridge of his nose. It added another layer of evidence. The figure in Rohr's photo might not have been a mere passerby. Yet the military court convened after the Deep Bottom disaster voted 3-2 to attribute the loss to tactical miscalculation due to obstructed terrain, making no mention of enemy infiltration. Official records of Civil War tribunals are still housed in the Judge Advocate General's archives under microfilm code M1105, available for researcher review. To this day, however, no field investigation has re-examined the ambush site using high-resolution imaging like the one captured, unintentionally, by Rohr's glass plate. Now, with the image digitized to over 90 megapixels, facial recognition algorithms have placed Finch's features, ear contour, cheekbone angle, at the exact vantage point where crossfire rained down on the bridge. The historical community is being forced to reconsider. Were those slashed map lines and whispered directions the markings of mere coincidence? Or the blueprint of a spy embedded in Union ranks? What do you think? Accident or conspiracy? The fifth ultraviolet scan at the National Library's Photo Preservation Lab had seemed routine, until a revelation appeared. In the cracked edge of Daniel Rohr's collodion glass plate, a full fingerprint emerged, blurred with traces of silver nitrate. Yes, but still clear enough for 12 distinct ridge characteristics. Analysts extracted the pattern and ran it through Civil War Photo Sleuth, an AI platform developed by Professor Kurt Luther that has identified over 3,300 unknown faces from the Civil War. Within minutes, the algorithm returned a 9 out of 12 match with an inked print marked EF on a 1871 license application for a photo studio in Leavenworth, Kansas. What made the discovery even more shocking? Leavenworth was the very place where Kansas's prison system first used fingerprinting for inmate tracking, in 1903, decades ahead of the national standard. That means EF left behind a fingerprint 30 years before the technique was officially adopted, a move eerily in line with Grey Crow's reputation for being ahead of his time. Digging deeper, researchers contacted the Leavenworth Historical Society, currently digitizing thousands of negatives and state registries from 1870s photography studios. A 2021 local radio segment had described Leavenworth as the photo capital of Kansas, drawing thousands of freed black residents to have their portraits taken after fleeing the South. On page 14 of the 1872 tax ledger, a brief entry appeared. Finch, E. Occupation, photographer, moved to Colorado, whereabouts unknown. The note sent ripples through the historical community. Finch disappeared just as Colorado's silver boom exploded, a paradise for anyone looking to vanish. A second clue came from Caleb Morgan, great-great-grandson of Signal Corpsman John Morgan, who died at Deep Bottom. While cleaning his attic, Caleb found an old brass badge belonging to his ancestor. The back was coated in a strange, tar-like black residue that wouldn't come off. He sent the item to Northern Iowa University, where a ballistics chemistry team scanned the sample using X-ray fluorescence XRF, the same method used to detect gunpowder on Civil War firearms. The results revealed sulfur and potassium nitrate, the exact composition found on metal rivets recovered from the 1863 Browns Island munitions factory explosion, the worst industrial disaster of the Confederate era that killed 64 workers. If Finch had indeed tampered with artillery at Browns Island, as rumored in shadow files, then the soot on Morgan's badge might be the last living trace of his sabotage. Taken together, the fingerprint match to EF and the chemical twin of the Browns Island residue, the post-war fog surrounding Grey Crow is rapidly burning away. While federal law hadn't yet mandated fingerprint tracking, Finch had already slipped into Kansas under the alias of a migrant photographer, flying under every radar. From that position, he could develop prints, copy maps, and pass through military checkpoints undetected, his trusty collodion camera doing the dirty work. But the matching chemical signature from the 1863 explosion now forces a deeper question. Did Finch smuggle explosive formulas from Richmond to bankroll a new life in the frontier? Or is the soot on that badge a leftover from some unknown confrontation no one ever recorded? Here, the story forks. Option 1. Gray Crow retired in the Rockies, lived out his days as a forgotten studio photographer, and died nameless in Colorado's vast plains. Option 2. He kept the camera as his shield, capturing topography along the underground railways of the Rocky Mountains, for a new power rising after the war. Either way, the fact that a man declared dead on July 28, 1864, casually signed a Kansas tax registry in 1772 shatters everything military court records once claimed. Before we brush off the dust and set out to find the abandoned studio in Kansas, let's take a step back, zoom out the frame once more, and retrace the entire journey from Poplar Grove to Leavenworth. It is this broader cross-section that reveals why what seemed like a simple farewell memento had the power to shake both military records and post-war chronicles. And so, now is the moment for MindGap to gather every clue, look directly at the bigger picture, and ask the final question. What is the true legacy of Elias Finch? That 10 by 12-inch glass plate, once thought to be nothing more than a final memento of a sunny noon in Poplar Grove, has opened a labyrinth of history. From the moment that stranger's face emerged beneath the oak leaves, we followed trails of blood and gunpowder to Deep Bottom Bridge, where the 32nd Regiment fell in an ambush that wiped out more than half its men. And when a fingerprint at the edge of the plate matched a 1871 studio license in Kansas, the hunt for Elias Finch stretched across war, Reconstruction, and the taming of the American West. This story reminds us, in every old photo, there may be a silent witness with the power to rewrite history. All it takes is one more zoom, and an entire battlefield might shake, a military verdict, sealed for over a century, could be overturned in a flash. So, what do you think? Was Elias Finch a master of disguise, or just a ghost conjured by a war-torn memory? Hit like, share, subscribe, and leave your thoughts below. Or suggest the next mystery you want MindGap to unravel.